Hello.
I gotta get a ticker on the bottom. It's like a newscast. The Real Football Fans of New Jersey. But welcome to the show. This is the Real Football Fans of New Jersey, and we are so excited to have you guys back again for another episode. Whether you are tuning in live or catching us on the podcast, on your favorite outlets, obviously, we're everywhere. We're on Apple Podcasts, the Spotify, we're on, Stitcher. I think that's what Android users use. I don't know. There's like a million podcast outlets, and we are literally on every single one. So you can't not watch us. And we're literally on every single social media platform too. So you can't not watch us or listen to us on there either. But we are so excited to have you with us. This is episode 169. As we say every single week, we are moving and grooving to that 200th episode. We had an amazing 100th episode with you guys. You better believe we're going to have an incredible 200th episode with you. But as we get there, we do one of our favorite followers on here, Hot Dog City. He's back. What's up?
Hot Dog City.
Hot Dog City. What's up? Not much. What is up with you? I'll tell you what's up with us. We have a tremendous guest with us tonight, and we are talking all things fantasy football. Because every year, every season, you guys are on our asses to talk about fantasy football. Some of you come to us like 8 months before the season. They're like, when's fantasy football? When are you guys going to talk about fantasy football? Well, listen, we've got other things to do. But tonight we are talking fantasy football. I'm going to go ahead, bring our guest in. So here he is, Jeff Pratt. Say hello to our audience.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Jeff is also known as, your Twitter handle is Hotline Fantasy, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
thought you were about to say Hot Dog City.
It's been me all along. Yeah.
Hot Dog City tunes in every week. So I'd be like, oh my God, how did we not notice?
You're Hot Dog City?
You're Hot Dog City. No, so Jeff is Hotline Fantasy on the Twitter. And I think I just learned right before the show when I tweeted something out that you are a Patriots fan. So unfortunately, Jeff, this is where our time ends. We are ending the show.
Man.
We wanted to interview you tonight, but really that's it. This is where it ends right here. So.
Made it longer than I thought I would.
I don't know how I didn't pick up on that earlier than tonight, but maybe I was just
know until just now.
I didn't know either. So we're clearly both guilty of that. But Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to get more in depth into all the fantasy football talk. But to get started, can you just tell our audience, tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jeff Pratt. I'm 21 from Southern New Hampshire. I currently study journalism and sports communications at Emerson College up in Boston. I grew up a huge New England sports fan, as these two just found out. While you may have ill will towards my team, I do not have any ill will towards the Giants. I'm actually rooting for you guys to come out of your division this year. So maybe that's something we could talk about eventually. But yeah, I grew up a huge New England sports fan, also a fantasy football fanatic. In 2019, I launched my Twitter, Hotline Fantasy. And then it wasn't me. It wasn't personalized back then. It was just devoted to being a 24/7 fantasy football hotline for anyone to ask questions. I got anywhere from like 250 to 500 questions a week, a ton on Sundays. Yeah, it was great. I just really enjoyed being a part of the fantasy football Twitter community. It was something I was new to, but it's incredible. And a couple of months ago, I joined DraftKings as a social and content intern. And then I decided to take my Twitter personal to kind of combine the Hotline Fantasy brand and Jeff Pratt so I could become more of a full-time analyst. I do a lot of cool stuff for them, including weekly articles. When the NBA season was going, I did daily articles for them. With the NFL season coming up, I'll definitely be doing probably a couple of weekly pieces for DraftKings. And I also was the head of NFL for a small startup called The Breakdown, which unfortunately recently shut down, but you can find me now fantasy-wise at Primetime Sports Talk. It's at Talk Primetime on Twitter. And I think I've spoken about myself enough.
What a resume. Very impressive.
Right? Thank you.
Only at 21 years old. Katie and I were like walking around with our canes and we're like, do anything
what were we doing at 21 besides in a bar somewhere drinking wine and we're still
Hey, that sounds fun too.
Well, that is great. And, it's great because, you really do hit like home and are very similar to both Katie and myself too. So Katie was a journalism and she also did sports within college as well, a lot of sports writing. And then I'm in the social media world right now. So currently, so we definitely, all three of us relate on so many levels, but props to you for hitting on all of those areas, early in your, professional career. And then also too, within the sports world, we think that's truly great. So yeah, but I love it. I love it. I love it. So let's go ahead and get into some actual real-time fantasy football questions here. So there are a ton of fantasy leagues out there, the types you can play in that honestly, it gives me a headache, but I'm really trying to understand. But, near and dear to your heart, what is your favorite type of league to play in?
Yeah, I want to keep it simple here, and a lot of people probably aren't going to love my answer, but it's just a straight up PPR redraft league.
Yeah.
It's what I grew up playing when I started playing fantasy. Dynasty is amazing. Don't get me wrong. Playing the long game, having a ton of flexibility with your lineup and your roster, it's incredible what it has done for the fantasy football community. But I love the chaos of redraft, and the stakes, they're always higher. They're always more intense. Instead of playing the long game, as I talked about, you're trying to win every year, and every single injury, decision, start, bench move that's made, it can have major repercussions for the season. So I love it.
He likes the chaos. I don't know
if
I do. So liking the chaos for sure.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. So clearly we have some news with, wide receiver Michael Thomas. And Katie and I are actually going to get into it later in the episode, just like more details like on the news or everything. But he is going to start later in the season. It's not going to be right away. So given this news, what round do you think people should draft wide receiver Michael Thomas in now that he's going to miss like a decent amount?
It's a good question. To be honest, I wouldn't draft him at all. He's 28 now. He's got a significant injury history. It sounds like he's going to miss a sizable chunk of the season, as you said. And, he's dealing with an uncertain situation at quarterback for the foreseeable future. We still don't know who the starter is in New Orleans. And quite frankly, if Taysom Hill was named the starter today, I would lock in that I would just stay away from Michael Thomas completely, because we know what type of limitations they have when Taysom Hill is under center. Now, if Jameis is under center, it's a different story. When Michael Thomas was healthy this offseason, or at least we presumed that he was healthy, I was high on him having a bounce back year. But, him getting surgery so late in the offseason, the timing there was weird. Obviously, he's an extremely talented player. I'm not going to trash on him as a player. And there comes a point where you're in a draft where it gets late enough that you have to take Michael Thomas. For me, the breaking point there, it's the 6th round. The early 7th round. Obviously, he's probably not going to fall there in leagues to you. But at some point, if he does, that is when I feel like I would have no choice but to take Michael Thomas. But, after what he put all of us through last year and his ankle still not being 100% this year, I'd stay away.
I find it so fascinating. Like Caitlin said, we're going into year 4 of this podcast. And so obviously we've been doing fantasy football coverage every off season. And I always find it, and granted, we have our notes from every single show we've ever done. And when you look back at past fantasy drafts, I always find it like crazy how quickly some of the top guys can change. Like Michael Thomas was surefire, like number 1 wide receiver.
If you get him, you get like.
I'm thinking of guys like Le'Veon Bell, Adrian Peterson, like names like that, or Des Bryant, and then he just wasn't in the league anymore. Like these were guys who were like you had to have them in like the 1st and 2nd round just a couple of years ago, and then when you see how much it changes, it really is. That's probably what makes Dynasty hard, rather than starting anew every year, because it's so wild to see the rise and fall of certain players.
Oh, it really is. And, you just slipped that in there on me. 4 years doing this podcast, 169 episodes, by the way. Congratulations to you guys. That is a huge accomplishment. Honestly, that is extremely impressive.
Thank you.
Honestly, it's just, we just get together and talk football and housewife. That's, it's our day to day. So it's nothing really out of the ordinary for us, but it's a thing. We do truly appreciate that for sure. And it's funny, bringing up like the Michael Thomas thing, and then, Katie, you saying too, like the must-haves, the gotta-have-ems, and they turn into that. But I always thought too, you brought up Des Bryant, comes back into the league after X amount of years and turns back into a like, ooh, gotta have him, shiny object. And you're like, what the hell? Don't go after him. What are you doing? Like, stop. So like, does Michael Thomas become that in years from now when, like you said, he's 28, he's a wide receiver, getting a little stung with the injury bug a little bit. I do question the kind of late surgery as well. That's something that was totally, when the news came out, like obviously moving into our conversation later, it was definitely a question mark for sure. Like, why would you wait so long for literally probably the star of your team going into this season?
Right.
I wonder too, does he turn into that guy that, moves forward, kind of takes a step back, maybe retires, come back, and then people are like, ooh, he was hot back in the day. I need him now.
Yeah, I'd say maybe. The one thing we know about Michael Thomas is he wants to get paid. And he wants to get paid a lot. The fiasco he had with his contract a couple of years ago, I don't necessarily see him retiring or stepping away from the game. And it really is, as you said, such an interesting discussion to have, because we're 2 years removed from him setting the NFL single season reception record, right? Like he was the top of the top. And now 2 years from then, you got guys like me who just don't want to draft him. They want nothing to do with him. And if he were, if he was on my real team, I'd be pissed at him for getting that surgery so late. I would have a lot of questions. The Saints have a ton of questions, as we mentioned earlier, but quarterback, everything. I don't know. They might try to move on from him at some point, but Michael Thomas, he's a really weird situation. I could absolutely see him taking a couple of years off down the line after his contract runs out. And maybe trying to make a comeback. We know that doesn't work out too well for receivers nowadays, but yeah, I mean, I could see it. It's just a really weird situation with him.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's pivot into some of our newbies that we have. So obviously it's always interesting, rookie seasons, looking at a lot of guys within fantasy, but one of the most exciting parts about fantasy, in my opinion, in the NFL in general, are players entering their sophomore season. So it's something huge to look at every single year. So in your opinion, what player heading into their sophomore season do you like the most?
Well, the answer would have been Cam Akers. Unfortunately,
I know that was a hard one.
Yeah, it's still a little sharp, but it would have been Cam Akers. I was really high on him in this offense, especially led by Matthew Stafford. They were my Super Bowl pick, and they still could make a deep run.
That's a really bold.
That is, yeah. I mean, obviously, I mean, you got the contenders, but if I'm going to pick a team that's not a favorite, the Rams were by far they were by far that team, especially with Stafford under center. But it was Akers. Obviously, he's not going to be there this year, so I'll go with a receiver. And heading to Dallas, it's going to be CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott, he's back and healthy, and he's a guy who
in the heart.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, but I'm not expecting them to do too much from a real life perspective. But we know how lethal that Cowboys offense is from a fantasy perspective, especially Dak. Everyone in that offense, really, and we know that Dak and CeeDee, they have an outstanding rapport. Last year, when Dak was healthy, Lamb, he was wide receiver 10 in PPR leagues through week 6. And then Dak gets hurt. It all goes downhill. And then Amari Cooper really only remained as the consistent fantasy weapon for that team. Yeah, guys like Zeke, CD, they all took a dip when Andy Dalton took over for that team. But we look at Amari Cooper now, he's still dealing with an ankle issue. And Jerry Jones said that he thought he was going to practice by mid-August. But we know that Amari Cooper, he has an injury history himself. He's getting up there a little bit in age. He's still young, but obviously
Dallas doesn't use him the right way. They don't use him properly.
No, I agree.
So it's so funny that your answer is CeeDee Lamb, because we actually played our first fantasy football game last week on last week's show, and we were matching up players. Who would you rather have in fantasy this season? And we decided to pit Amari Cooper versus CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah.
Who would you rather have? I know I went with CeeDee Lamb. Caitlin, I think you went with him as well. I don't remember.
Yeah, I did too, because the main reason the Cowboys do not use Amari Cooper the way in which he should be used. It's not, they use him incorrectly. It was an awful, I think people really liked the trade, and like really loved him coming over to Dallas, but you need to use him properly. And my argument is always, I've been watching him since his Bama days, and I know that you're not using him properly. So that was my argument. CeeDee Lamb's scary. He's a monster. I'm afraid that he's on Dallas. So
you like CeeDee Lamb best for sophomores.
Yeah.
You like him over Amari Cooper? Are you drafting him before Amari Cooper?
I'm not drafting Amari Cooper this year. He's another guy who's on my do not draft list. Yeah. I think he would be, if I was going to take him, I would take him over CeeDee Lamb, but I 100% want CeeDee over Amari this year. And I think that there's a really good shot that he finishes the year as the wide receiver 1 in Dallas, because Dak and him, they already have that great rapport. Amari, as you said, they're not using him right, and he struggles to stay on the field at times. He picks up a lot of ticky-tack injuries. Yeah. So, I'll take CeeDee over Amari this year.
All right.
We got a comment on YouTube that the Cowboys offense isn't a joke, but their defense was the issue last year. Just your average Joe. We are totally aware of that. Their defense was the issue. And no, none of us have ever said that the Cowboys offense is a joke. Katie and I have said week over week, like I almost compare them to the Atlanta Falcons at times. On paper, their offense is holy shit, freaking talented. Where are you putting that on the field? Where is it coming Sunday after Sunday? Where is it? You're turning into the Atlanta Falcons where they've been over the past couple of seasons. It's there. It's on paper. Tremendous. So much talent. Where is it? I'm not seeing it. So that's what the Cowboys are kind of shaping into. Let's see if they can pivot from that this season. But that's just general football talk. We're talking fantasy here, people. So this is always a good one too, because there's actually always multiple. We're just going to come after you with one. If you do have more than one, feel free to share. But who is a big sleeper pick that you have this coming fantasy season?
Sure. I've got two. One of them is more of a sleeper than the other, but I'll run through them relatively quickly. The first one is Marvin Jones for me. Okay. He's the only player in that. Yeah, he's the only player in the NFL who has caught 9 or more touchdowns in the past 2 years in each of them. That was an interesting stat when I found that a couple of weeks ago. But there's a lot of hype around Laviska Shenault and DJ Chark. But I think that Jones, he's going to be the safety valve for Trevor Lawrence.
He was on my fantasy team last year.
Yeah, he was a good player. I feel like he's a guy you can never go wrong with. In mid to late rounds of fantasy drafts. Yeah, 100%. But Trevor Lawrence, he's got high upside players.
Oh, I don't know though.
Lawrence ain't Stafford. You're right. He's better than Matthew Stafford. No, I'm just messing around. But Trevor Lawrence, he's still going to come in and be a good player just because that offense is going to be on the field a lot because the defense is going to give up a lot of points. I think that. And Chark, he's been inconsistent. Shenault, he's much more of a versatile tool than he is a guy you go to a lot. Mm-hmm. So I think that at least to start the year, Marvin Jones could easily be the number 1 wide receiver in this offense and that safety valve that Trevor Lawrence needs to go to consistently as a rookie. And, he's going around like his ADPs for Fantasy Pros is like 115. So I'll take that value every time.
I like that sleeper pick. That's a good one. Makes me feel good about myself taking it last year.
100%.
Who's your second one?
Yeah,
sure. The second one's he's not as much of a sleeper in terms of his ADP. He's a little higher, but he's another guy with the values way too good, and it's Brandon Cooks. The Texans, they are preparing for Tyrod Taylor to start at quarterback, but he still needs someone to throw to, right? They lost Will Fuller. Randall Cobb was just traded back to Green Bay, and Cooks, he's clearly the top guy. He's had 5 1,000+ yard seasons in his last 6 years. So he's always underrated. And I feel like because he's bounced around the league so much, people think less of him. But the dude can still come out and ball. He's still young, and he can still be a wide receiver 1 on a bad team that's going to probably be looking to move the ball through the air quite a bit this year.
This is just like a little side non-fantasy note, but I totally agree with you. There's certain players in the league that have bounced around so much. And I don't really understand why, because they're good players. Yep. And then they fall into these, like, in your mind, you kind of file them away as like, oh, maybe they're not that great that they've bounced around. And I always bring up on the show, Clinton Dix.
Yeah.
I love obviously, it's Bama. But
yes, we fall into that stigma when we see somebody go on so many different teams in such a short career. We're like, what's wrong with this guy? Why doesn't anybody want him? And honestly, Brandon Cooks,
he does.
I do think that counts as a sleeper pick because he is one of those guys. And honestly, I think a lot of people forget about him. So Absolutely. I think that's a great answer. I think he counts as a sleeper for sure.
Yeah.
Sweet.
100%. And just a quick shout out here from Betting and Heels.
Yeah.
Hi, supporting ladies in sports. Absolutely. And I always
Yes.
say too, Katie and I are not the betters in the world, but what I've learned just from like the side gig that my boyfriend does all the time, that there's a lot of women bettors, gamblers out there, and they know what they're talking about, and I have no idea. So go over there. So clearly, like, I have no idea. So go follow Betting and Heels, because clearly she knows what she's talking about, and we don't. So don't ever listen to us when it comes to that stuff. All right. So this is actually a little bit of a loaded question. So there's a couple people that you have to go here. So who is one player for like the main, I kept out quarterbacks for this, but like big, offensive positions, wide receiver, running back, tight end, that people should stay away from? So this is like,
you already gave us a couple.
I know you did. But if you have to, so repeat yourself if it's the same person. So, but, just so the audience is tuning in right now. But yeah, so for these positions, who are people that you're completely staying away from?
So Amari Cooper is the first one for wide receiver. As I said, I won't really go much.
It sucks to hear that. Like,
yeah.
I agree with you. Like I 100% would as well. It sucks to hear that. So
yeah, another guy I had written down for wide receiver. He's always divisive, always a polarizing option. It's OBJ. The Browns, they're just
agreed.
They're just better when he doesn't play. It's still also very much a run first offense. I've been very vocal in my support for Nick Chubb. I think he's a top 3 running back in the game. I think that they have the best 1-2 punch in football in Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Yeah. And Baker Mayfield, you look at the second half of last season, yes, he stepped up, but it was when OBJ went down and he wasn't looking to force feed him the ball so much. That's when Baker's better. Off of the play action, when he's able to really look at all his options and choose the best one instead of looking at, hey, I got Odell Beckham Jr. He's double teamed, but I'm going to throw him the ball because he's going to get mad at me if I don't, and it's OBJ. So I still think, I think OBJ could be a good player, but this isn't the right situation for him.
Not only do I agree with you that that's like a run first offense with Nick Chubb, but then you also have a quarterback who likes to run it if he can. So that makes it even worse for your.
And he's still working on his run game. Like I could sit down and tell you here that Baker Mayfield is still working on it, and he wants to be a better running quarterback. Yeah. And he could get there. So if he continues to work on that, then it's still going to be a him and Nick Chubb sort of offense. So
100%.
A lot of weapons on that offense, and so you've got to. I imagine in fantasy football, sometimes that hurts certain players of like their draft spots because it's like, oh, okay. As much as we all love Nick Chubb, we were talking about him last week. Like, yeah, he's going to have to share those carries with Kareem Hunt. Yeah, Odell's going to have to share his catches with Jarvis. Like, you know what I mean? So sometimes when somebody's on too loaded of an offense, that always is a question mark for me of like, where should I take this guy? How much is he going to get the ball compared to somebody else?
100%. Yeah, I agree. Do you want me to get in my RB and tight end then really quick?
Do it.
Sure. All right. For running back, I've got Raheem Mostert. The 49ers backfield, it's always a crapshoot. They brought in Trey Sermon in the draft and Wayne Gallman, who looked good for you guys last year. Yeah. I liked him too.
Wayne Gallman fans.
Yeah. I was too. I tuned into your games a couple of times, and he was killing it for you guys. And then Mostert, another guy. It's a theme here for guys I don't like. People with significant injury histories. He's also older in his career. He's in his late 20s. We know that that's a death sentence for running backs in the NFL. Yep. Although he didn't have as much wear and tear on his tires because he didn't get that many touches early in his career, but his body doesn't seem to be holding up as well. It's just way too risky to spend a mid to late round pick on a guy like Raheem Mostert in my mind.
I think that's a really good. Yep. Good input.
And tight ends.
Yeah,
say Evan Ingram. Say Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram's just not. He's not even on my board.
Is he?
He's not even
I was
on my
gonna say,
board.
is it? Tell the world not to draft Evan Ingram because he sucks. Tell the world that. Tell the world that.
Yeah, he's not my pick, but that's because it's obvious. Do not draft Evan Ingram. I have better hands than Evan Ingram.
Right? I have better hands.
Yes.
I do. I would call the New York Giants and tell them I have better hands.
Yeah, don't draft Evan Ingram. The guy I had is a much more high profile tight end.
It's
It's not Gronk. But Gronk's a guy, I think he proved
We've
himself last
advised
year.
against do not take.
That's fair. That's fair. He's not a guy I'm super high on by any means this year, but he's not a guy who I'm staying away from at all costs. For me, considering his price tag, it's Mark Andrews from the Ravens, and that, yeah.
Wait, I
me,
thought we disagreed on this on Twitter. I thought, we did disagree on this on Twitter. I said Mark Andrews, and you said T.J. Hawkinson.
Yes, Hawkinson. Yeah.
Or Hawkinson, sorry.
No.
Don't know how to pronounce names. Everyone on the show knows that.
Yes,
so.
No, that's fine.
I'm really bad at every name.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yes, we did disagree on this, and I put him over TJ because
and I put TJ.
I love TJ. I love TJ, especially
I put him over
in
that
offense.
because he might be getting the hits in Detroit, but he ain't getting good ones. He's not getting quality targets. They're not quality.
I respond by saying, do you think that Mark Andrews is getting quality targets from Lamar Jackson?
Maybe. If he's having a bad running game, and he does.
Yeah, maybe.
He's probably one of the worst dual threat quarterbacks, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I would still draft Mark Andrews, but I my reasoning for picking TJ Hawkinson last week's show is because I feel like he is the focal point and one of the only bright spots on that team.
100%.
So he's gonna have to be the man. He's gonna have to do it all.
100%. Yeah.
Mark Andrews, like I just said, when you're on a loaded offense and everybody's got to get touches, like that's the Baltimore Ravens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I agree. I like Hawkinson a lot. I think he has potential to finish as that tight end 3, tight end 4 if a guy gets injured from that higher echelon, like we saw with George Kittle going down last year. But Mark Andrews this year for me, it's mostly his price, as you said, because you're going to have to spend like a 5th or a 6th round pick on him. That's not the spot where I usually like to take tight ends. If I'm taking a tight end, I'm going early with an elite guy, or I'm waiting till like rounds 9 or 10, picking up a more of a value tight end who I think can still put up decent production. That's just how I like to roll. So that's not the price range for me with Mark Andrews. And it hurts him that he's catching passes from Lamar Jackson, who hasn't shown significant upgrades in his throwing ability throughout his career.
Yeah, I like that strategy. I think that's a good little pointer for our listeners out there for their leagues. I agree with that.
Shoots my opinions down, but I do appreciate the insight for sure.
No, and it's just one insight. Different things work for different people, right?
Yeah.
It definitely makes a lot of sense for sure. So obviously, 2020 was a crazy year across the board, football, the world, everything. So I love when we see a good bounce back player in regards to fantasy. So what players, you can give us 1, 2, how many you want, what people do you think are going to bounce back this season in regards to fantasy?
The first guy who immediately pops up on my list is Austin Eckler, because I love that Chargers offense. Look at how many games they lost by one possession. Last year, it was like 5+, and they could have been a playoff team.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
I was extremely high on Justin Herbert last year coming out of the draft. I wanted the Patriots to trade up and get him. Obviously, they didn't, and hey, that's Los Angeles' game.
Oh, it's all right. You got Mac Jones.
Yeah, we'll be fine. But Herbert's, he's a stud. I think he's going to be an MVP candidate this year. And Austin Eckler is going to help him get there. Absolutely. Especially catching passes out of the backfield, even handling a lot of carries more than usual maybe. But yeah, I love Austin Eckler. I think that he struggled with a really bad hamstring strain last year, but he's fully healthy and he's going to be a major weapon. He and Keenan Allen I'm both very high on from a fantasy perspective this year.
I think Eckler is a little bit of a sleeper, not like stat wise, but another guy similar to Brandon Cooks where I feel like people forget about him. I don't know about him. Obviously, he got hurt last year. But to be honest with you, like maybe even I forgot about him a little bit until like I was watching Hard Knocks when they were on Hard Knocks. And I was like, oh shit. Yeah, he's really good. I like sometimes forget about him, but yeah, that's a great point. I like that pick a lot.
Sweet. Yeah. I've got one more quick one. Just a shout out to you guys. A shout out to Steffi Smalls, who I got into an argument with on Twitter about this. I'm going with Saquon, or Saquon, however you want to pronounce his name. Sorry, but
and I'm wearing his shirt, so
yes, love it. And from a talent perspective, it's as good as it gets with Saquon. And you guys know more than me at this point, but when is he going to start getting that full workload? Is it going to be week 2, week 3? Because we know they're easing him in.
So basically they came out, I think it was like, because camp started this week for everyone. He's not working out fully. And they basically said that we're not going to, I don't know what the right word is. We're not going to jeopardize his entire career for 1 or 2 games. So we see him in week 3 or week 4.
I was going to say like week 4, probably.
Yeah. And it makes sense. Like we've seen his workouts, his quads are still bigger than ever. Nothing has happened. He's okay. He's with, when Daniel Jones is doing his trainings, he might not be there doing it with him, doing handoffs or doing things like that. And we've seen a couple of things where they are kind of doing things, no pads together, but he's there. He's in his mind. They're talking to each other. He's with the line. He's talking to them. He's doing that things. He's not fully taken out of the equation. Like he is there. He's doing everything that he possibly can. And I do agree with the Giants organization. I think in years past, it might maybe have been mishandled. And it's like, shit, that's our best player. We have to get him on the field. We have to do things like that. I don't give a shit if we go into week 4 and we don't have him there yet. Like, let's relax. Like, we only took him round 2 for a freaking reason. Like, let's pump the brakes. So,
sure. And let's say that he does hold off a little bit. Then another guy I like to bounce back just off the top of my head, but he's someone I'm high on. It's another member of that Giants offense. It's Kenny Golladay. He struggled in Detroit last year with injuries. We don't really know how injured he actually was. There was a bit of a weird situation there, but just looking statistically, I mean, Kenny Golladay, he's one of the best deep ball receivers in the game, and Daniel Jones statistically threw the best deep ball in the game last year. So just putting 2 and 2 together there, if Kenny Golladay can stay healthy and Saquon does end up missing a couple of weeks there, he could see a pretty high usage rate in those first few weeks, and they could develop quite the rapport.
Listen, I know myself and some other Giants fans as well have kind of mentioned it, and I'm really hoping that we see Kenny Golladay kind of be like a Plexico Burress, honestly. You know what I mean? Like, let's just throw it up to him in the red zone. Let's get him the deep ball. He's got the height. Like, I feel like it's been a hot minute since the Giants really had like a wide receiver of that size. It's been a little bit. And so I know we're all really excited to see what he's going to bring to the table.
Yeah, I would too. I think he's going to be great for you guys.
I love it. I hope so.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. So when it comes to being a fantasy team owner, there's clearly some crucial mistakes that you can make, whether it's on draft day or throughout the season. So what is for you giving advice right now? Like, what is one, crucial, critical mistake that these owners can make? And again, it's either during draft day or throughout the entire season.
Yeah, so I don't have anything huge on draft day because obviously people draft in different ways. My biggest no-no, yeah. I mean, you could just suck at drafting, but my biggest no-no in the draft is taking a quarterback early. I usually like to hold off till round 6 or 7. Get my guy the past couple of years. It was Dak a couple of years ago. It was Josh Allen last year. Look how that one worked out. It is Justin Herbert.
You.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna keep coming back to that because that was probably my biggest hit of the year. Yeah. But it's Justin Herbert, as I talked about him this year for me, but everyone drafts differently. So there's not a huge no-no for me unless you're out there taking Patrick Mahomes in the first round of a 1-quarterback league. Never do that. Just please don't.
And people will.
People will. Just please don't. You're only hurting yourself. But I'd say the biggest issue and the biggest thing that hurts people throughout the fantasy season, it's just falling victim to recency bias. And when it comes to making trades, I mean, you got guys stepping in, having a big game or two, and then obviously the trade value shoots up. And the worst thing you can do, unless you're a contender in a dynasty league or you're a contender in a redraft league, is paying up for these guys and buying high on them when you should not. I'm always a believer in buying low because I think that's just the best way to upgrade your team, and it's cost efficient, it's cost effective. But I'd avoid recency bias. Try your best to avoid throwing offers for a guy who just had a 30-point game, because it's not going to happen 2 games in a row or very consistently.
Sammy Watkins last year.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins. I mean, he comes to mind.
I had him. Yep, had him last year.
I recommend
first game of the season.
I recommend you
me over.
draft Sammy Watkins and then trade him after week 1. That's probably the best strategy you can have in
I should have
fantasy.
done it last season. Gonna do it this season. Screwed me over last year.
I have a side question as far as like you're talking about you don't like to take a quarterback early. How do you feel like what would you rather take, or maybe it changes for you, but do you take a kicker first or do you like to take a defense first?
Kicker, because I usually
take my kickers early.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can get a defense, I'm never aiming to take an elite defense unless there's guys on the boards who I just really don't like, because I usually end up streaming defenses. I think that's clearly probably the best way to go, unless you luck out and you get that number 1 defense.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
By the way, I've never played fantasy football before in my life. And this year
is her first year.
Let's go.
I do it. And so, I'm asking as somebody who's, learning and experiencing for the first time. I can't tell you how many times I have helped people with their fantasy football stuff. I've literally sat there. There was one year, it was like 2 years ago, where my brother-in-law was like, I can't make my fantasy draft. Here's my login for ESPN. And you've got to do it. And I'm like, oh, okay. You want to before, right? Like, I know players and I know stats, but I've never done this before. So I think I'll be okay, but I definitely appreciate the advice for sure.
Oh, no problem at all. You can always hit me up after this too, by the way. I'm always happy to give advice. Yeah.
Good. I know who to go to.
Yeah.
For sure. And this is the last question that, Jeff, you actually didn't prepare for. So,
man.
But it is something that I did read recently and did, it's an interesting strategy when it comes to drafting. So I would just love your opinion on it. So I want to know when you're going to draft your first wide receiver, because this recent strategy that I've heard of is that you shouldn't take your wide receiver, your first one, until maybe like the 6th round or beyond. Build up on your tight ends and your running backs first, because you can get a guy like Jefferson maybe in the 6th or 7th round. You can get wide receivers that are quality wide receivers a little bit later on. So I know that was a little bit of a detailed answer for me afterwards, but that's why I'm asking you, where are you drafting wide receivers? Because that apparently is the new strategy on the block.
Yeah, for me, there's definitely merit to that strategy. First of all, I'm in a bunch of leagues every year, so I like to mix things up when I draft. But if I'm going to enter a draft with a specific strategy, I always say I guarantee myself that I'll take 3 running backs in the first 4 rounds. That's big for me, because every year in the NFL, the talent pool at running back is so shallow compared to the talent pool at wide receiver.
Absolutely.
Like you can say, I'm not sure you can get like a Justin Jefferson in the 6th round. I think he's probably more of like a 4th, 5th round guy, but you can get guys with tons of upside in those later rounds who could end up, breaking out, having wide receiver 1 finishes. So I think that there's definitely merit to that strategy. My advice is I like to stack up on the RBs early. I'll usually have 1 wide receiver on my roster by round 5, just to give myself a little bit of flexibility. So, I'm saying I don't have to lock into taking 3 or 4 straight wide receivers in the mid rounds in case a guy I like at running back falls a little bit. So I have flexibility to take him, but there's merit to that strategy, and I'm not going to fault you for it.
Yeah, and then if you do it and the draft is over and you find that a lot of people are really like need running backs, then you've got some trade bait there. So that could work out that way as well.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. But as far as the talent pool goes of running back compared to wide receiver in the National Football League, it has been a passing league for a while now. So, running backs. And also, Caitlin and I say this every year as well, there's not a lot of great tight ends.
No.
And so I would say after like 5 or 6 of them, that might even be stretching it. I feel like everybody else is like, ugh, like you're not too pumped to draft them.
No, 100%. And that's why I usually like waiting on tight ends. This year you can get guys like, throw out some Patriots here, but you can get guys like Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, who are going to be the focal point of New England's passing game. By the way, I think it's going to be Mac Jones under center sooner rather than later. So that only boosts them even more. And you can get those guys in round 7, 8 plus. Right. And it's not just them. It's every year you can get guys who are guaranteed to lock into some targets and you don't have to waste a mid-round pick on them.
Absolutely. Love it. Good stuff. Good tips.
Honestly,
thank you.
Truly great. I mean, honestly, anyone who's listening live right now, you just learned so much. And obviously,
I should have brought like a notebook and a pen.
You can watch it back.
Baby.
Katie, that's what I was going to say. Don't you worry, because you can catch this on our podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere. Listen and subscribe anytime. So, but yeah, as we wrap up, our segment with you, Jeff, we asked you a ton of questions, not to put you on the spot, but do you have any questions for us, maybe?
I'll throw one to you guys.
All right, we're ready.
What's the Giants' record this year, and where are they finishing?
Okay, so we actually did talk about this a couple weeks back. I will actually pull up the receipts. So, Katie, I don't know if you remember.
I could say off the top of my head, well, every week we do a different division and we give our best case, worst case scenario records for each team in that division. And I don't remember what I put for the Giants, but I kind of see them. I kind of see them as like a 7, maybe 8 win team this year, honestly.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
You put their best case scenario at 9-8 and worst at 5-12. I did the same, best 9-8 and 7-10 as their worst case scenario. I think I'm going to go more along the lines of closer to their best. I think I replied to something today with 8-9. So I think that's going to be.
So we're like 7-9 wins, both of us, pretty much. We're in that range, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know about winning the division. That could win the NFC East.
Yeah,
it could. It definitely
Yeah.
could. Katie and I are different, though. She feels that Dallas will win. I think Washington will win the division this year. So Philly's not on the planet. They're somewhere out there.
They got a better chance. Yeah, they got a better chance at the number 1 overall pick than winning the division.
I love that. Let's clip that.
I like that.
Yeah. We love that for sure.
Yeah.
But honestly, Jeff, this was such an amazing conversation. Our audience definitely learned so much as we are entering in, draft days for many fantasy leagues around the country. I know a lot of people are scooping in and starting soon. I don't do it until like the end of August, really. So I've got some time, but I'm definitely listening, to you. I'm on with you with Twitter every single day, looking at everything that you're doing, what everyone's commenting. So I'll make sure Katie's not on the Twitter, but I'll make sure that she's getting all the scopes, getting all the scoop, everything like that, everything that you have to offer and everything else that everyone follows you has to offer. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. As we sign off, please, again, can you tell our audience where they can find you and where they can follow you?
Sure. So you can follow me on Twitter at Hotline Fantasy. You can find my work at Primetime Sports Talk and occasionally DraftKings. But if you follow my Twitter, I will be promoting my content all the time. Guys, thank you so much for having me on. I had a blast. This was great. I'd love to come on eventually some other time after you guys hit 200 episodes and do this again. So thank you so much.
Well, you're on the East Coast, so you can probably come to our 200th episode. When we
sweet.
Party, so
come to Jersey, baby.
Love to. My girlfriend lives in New Jersey.
Perfect.
So, there we go.
Love it.
We're already there. We're halfway there. Don't worry.
Love it.
We will see you at our 200th episode. Jeff,
Sweet.
Thank you again so much. And we will see you online and we'll see you during football season.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No problem. Bye.
Bye. Well, what another phenomenal guest week after week. We are just, oh my God, it's amazing. I love it.
And fantasy football talk. I get why everybody asks us about it because it gets you really pumped. Like it gets you fired up for the season, both the real season and the fantasy football season.
It gets you pumped and you're like, shit, I got to go draft my team. I want to see who's playing week after week, who's getting me the most points. Like I was just reminiscing on last season so much. I was like,
I'm excited. I'm ready.
Watkins talk, the Marvin Jones talk. I was like, I'm ready.
I'm ready to dip my toes in the fantasy football pool. I'm
Katie,
excited.
I'm so excited for you. I'm so happy about this journey for you. I love this. I love this journey for you. I love this for you that you're finally getting into fantasy football. So everyone who's watching right now, give Katie a big
thank you.
Clap. She's joining the fantasy world, my friend.
That means I can't be helping y'all. I gotta help myself.
I gotta help myself.
But yeah, so we still have more football. Obviously, our big stories of the week in the world of football, NFL quick hot topics. We'll go rapid fire through this, just things we want you to know about. First one, we got some contract situations. San Fran and linebacker Fred Warner agreed to a 5-year extension worth more than $95 million with $40.5 million in guarantees, making him, and I believe rightfully so, I feel as he's an underrated player, it's making him the highest paid linebacker in the league. So kudos to him.
You love to see it.
Definitely deserves it. Well earned. 2 moves for Washington. They agreed to a 4-year, $72 million extension with defensive tackle Jonathan Allen with a $30 million signing bonus. He has definitely been one of the bright young spots on that defense. They have a great defense. They really do. Hate to say it, but it's true. They also agreed to a 3-year extension with tight end Logan Thomas. And then finally, Cincinnati agreed to a 4-year, $40 million deal with defensive end Sam Hubbard. As far as Michael
I liked
Thomas,
that deal with Sam Hubbard. I did.
Yeah. As far as Michael Thomas news, we talked about at the beginning of the show. On Friday, it was reported that the New Orleans wide receiver is expected to miss the start of the season after undergoing surgery to repair ligaments in his ankle in June. Now, this was in June. The recovery timetable is roughly 4 months. That takes you to October. Who knows? We'll see how rehab goes. Could be pushed to November. You never know. Very interesting. We talked about him. I think we brought him up on the show recently. Wide receiver Chris Hogan. He was going to transition back to the lacrosse world. He played, 4 years of college lacrosse, then used 1 year left of eligibility to play football. Went to the NFL, Patriots, Jets, bounced around. He's went back to lacrosse. Now he's coming back to New Orleans.
It's too much for me. There's too much bouncing around. There's too much going on.
But he's decided to go for it. So we'll see what happens with that. On Monday, it was reported that Houston is now willing to listen to trade offers for quarterback Deshaun Watson. As Jeff said, I think everybody's pretty much expecting Tyrod Taylor at this point. NFL Network's Tom Pelissero believing it could take, and this is crazy, take at least 3 first-round picks or more for Houston to agree. Watson did report to camp on Sunday, but has still expressed that desire to be traded to another team.
But that's just to me, that's just insane.
Especially because you're asking everybody to give up all that, and who knows what the hell's going to happen with this court case. Let's just.
And apparently 3 new people just came out with new accusations against him. So it's not, and I'm not saying anything's true or false. We can't. That's what the court is for. That's what our judicial system is for. But it's just, you're right. It's the unknown.
It's dicey. It's the unknown. Exactly.
No one gets 3 first-round picks for Aaron Rodgers, who isn't an unknown. What are you doing?
Crazy.
That's just insane. Crazy. That's just stupid. You need to know your team. And that, honestly, to me, just proves that Houston is so mismanaged. It's not even funny. From the top, from ownership down to the last person that leaves their facility at night, you are so mismanaged as an organization to think that right now Deshaun Watson is worth 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, we know it's going to get ugly in Houston. We've been saying it all along.
It's ugly right now, girl.
It's ugly right now. And finally, last but not least, there are a couple people that are going on the COVID list right now who are not able to be at training camp. New York Giants, we've got Blake Martinez, we've got Darius Toney. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that those players tested positive. They could have been around somebody that tested positive, but still, you've got a quarantine. So just. A big name that this is obviously a big deal. It's one thing for a player, but we've got the Indianapolis Colts head coach, Frank Reich. He actually did test positive for COVID. And, this is with the team kicking off training camp without him while he quarantines. And just in a general scope of things, reports are coming out that about 80% of the players in the NFL are vaccinated. But, this is going to be a running thing that happens throughout the season. We knew it was going to, I feel as though last year was successful. Now we have a vaccine, right? I would think that we'll have more success. But it doesn't take away from the fact that, yes, there are going to be times where maybe star players or head coaches are going to have to step away in quarantine. So this is what we've got already going so far.
Well, yeah, honestly, it's the hope in general that, it makes things better, but it's unfortunately, it's not a magical cure that's
Right.
the end all be all. I mean, I wish that's what the case was. So, but still, we're going to have to understand. And obviously, the NFL is taking drastic measures into what they're trying to do. If unvaccinated players test positive, there's fines, there's no payments, there's things like that. They're clearly, moving in a direction where it's like, you know what, you gotta do what you gotta do to move forward, and that's what the NFL is doing to make big decisions. But yeah, it's still, no matter what you do, and it's interesting that we see 80%. I know today, like Ron Rivera came out with a quote for Washington, and apparently a decent amount of their players are not.
Their report came out that they're the least vaccinated.
And he was very disappointed with that, obviously, and he just hopes that, I think the quote was like, they just need to do better. So it's very interesting that the 80%, that's a great number to be at for the entire NFL player, association, but to know that the Washington football team is just not there. You gotta look at everything holistically. So definitely interesting to see that for sure.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so now we are moving into our record predictions for this week. And this week we are doing the NFC South. So you have the Falcons, the Panthers, the New Orleans Saints, and the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Remember how we were saying, like at the beginning of the episode in fantasy, when it's funny to look back a couple of years ago and see who the big names were, and now they're like nothing.
So like this division,
this used to be the division. Like, you know what I mean? Like this used to be the division that could send and would send 3 teams to the playoffs. Things have obviously greatly changed. So interesting where we put them at.
So let's start with probably the most interesting team in this division, in my opinion, because I said it earlier on the show. On paper, their offense is dynamite, even giving away Julio Jones, but they still are, but don't really, excel on that in real time. I'm talking about the Atlanta Falcons. So best, worst case scenario, what do you have for them?
I know you are super critical of the Atlanta Falcons, and rightfully so. I understand it. It's not that I don't understand it. But I did obviously look at their schedule, as I always do with all of the teams. And I really felt as though they had a really easy schedule.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, I have them at 9-8.
Wow.
And worst case scenario, I have them at 6-11. And speaking of an easy schedule, it's not like the craziest thing in the world to imagine that they could start the season with a 4-1 record, because this is how it goes. They've got Philly at home, on the road against Tampa Bay. That's the loss, 4-1. They've got the Giants, Washington, and the Jets. They could potentially go 4-1. They have a very, very easy schedule. That is what's favoring me to give them these records.
Alrighty, well, I am critical, as you said, and I will continue to be critical of them. I am giving them their best case scenario, 6-11, and their worst case scenario, they'll drop back very similarly to they were in 2020, and I'm giving them a 4-13 worst case scenario.
All right.
I'm not believing it. I think in the past couple seasons, I've believed into them. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe they'll do. No, I'm not, Katie. I'm not giving in this year. I'm not giving in.
All right. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. Let's go with the Carolina Panthers. New quarterback. You have a returning Christian McCaffrey. What do you have the best worst case scenario?
It's just a team that I don't really like. I don't know. I'm not big on them. I've got them best case scenario 7-10, and I've got them worst case scenario 5-12. I think they have my note on them, a brutal final 4 games of the season. They're at Buffalo, Tampa Bay, at New Orleans, and then at Tampa Bay. So they're playing Tampa Bay twice in their last 3 games. And the last 3 of their 4 games not only are against really tough opponents, but 3 of their last 4 games are on the road.
Yeah.
That stretch at the very end is going to absolutely kill this team. I don't expect good things for them this season.
I really don't. I actually have them doing a little little bit better, and by a little bit better, it's one game than the Falcons. So best case scenario, I'm going to go with 7-10.
That's what I have.
Worst case scenario, 5-12.
Oh, we matched. Exactly.
We did. You actually, I blacked out a little bit.
We did.
Yeah. So that's why I didn't realize. I was like literally, like as you were saying your records, I was like, and I'm frozen.
We matched. We were right on par.
And that doesn't happen very often, people. All right, let's go down south to Louisiana with the New Orleans Saints, which is such a question mark this season. And we definitely spoke about it earlier with Jeff in regards to fantasy. But listen, it's on top of everyone's mind right now in regards to football with the New Orleans Saints. But best, worst case scenario, what do you got?
You guys know that
I might have been a little too nice, but you go.
Well, it's funny because you guys know that I always make at least one little note on each team of kind of like why I went the direction I did. And the note that I just made for them is don't know what to make of them.
Don't know. I don't know.
Huge question mark. I feel as though Caitlin feels a little bit better about New Orleans than I do, just from vibes I've gotten on
probably
past
like the name, it's the history. Maybe I'm just too hyped on that.
Yeah, and I do have them, slightly better than Atlanta and Carolina, but I have them best case scenario at 10-7, and I have them worst case scenario of 7-10. And
we agreed.
Yeah. Okay.
Again,
back to the 10 wins might be a little generous. I do feel as though I'm leaning more towards the worst case scenario, but again, I almost wanted to still give them credit in the fact that I think they're better than Carolina and Atlanta. Right. So I think that also swayed my decision on this.
100% agree with you. Obviously, we 100% agree on our, predictions of best case scenario 10-7, worst case scenario 7-10. We're 2 for 2. It's a little crazy, people.
I know.
Honestly, someone should go play the lottery tonight. That Katie and I are agreeing on something for once, especially record predictions. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely agree with you that we want to give like the edge, especially when we're in a conference with the reigning Super Bowl champions of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, I don't think all like 3 other teams are that terrible compared to the Bucs. I want to still give like the edge to the New Orleans Saints, but maybe not too much. But I agree with the 10-7. It might be a little generous this season, but I'll definitely give them the benefit of the doubt for sure.
Yeah.
All right, and let's move down to Florida with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What do you have for best, worst case scenario?
Best case scenario, I have Tampa Bay at 13-4, and worst case scenario, I have them at 11-6.
Okay.
What I have on this team is what I found most interesting when I was looking at their schedule is that for being the reigning Super Bowl champions, I thought they had a decently easy schedule. I don't know how it happened, but I feel as though their schedule is not that rough, which is definitely why, like, worst case scenario, I have them at 11-6, which is a great record. But yeah, they have like easier games. They're playing Chicago, Washington, the Giants, the Jets, like those games, and not for nothing. Then throw in 3 teams in your division that Caitlin and I just kind of like shit on, basically.
Yeah.
Like. This is another scenario, and it doesn't happen often, where Tampa Bay could sweep their entire division. They could go 6-0, and that's 6 wins right off the bat for them.
And what a glorious thing that is, 6 wins right off the bat. Wish we could be there for sure, but I'm just I'm basically 1 pillar below you, but I'm going with best case scenario 12-5, worst case scenario 10-7. So just one minor step below you. I don't see them falling into a Super Bowl slump. I don't want to say that at all, but I do just want people to be a little bit cautious going into this season. I don't think they're going to win another Super Bowl, so I want to actually put my money right there and say no. I don't think that's going to happen. So there will be some road speed bumps along the way that they will actually hit. So I think those are where I see right there. So I actually see them probably fall in the sun. So thank you, Anthony. Completely agree with you guys. Besides Tampa, this division doesn't scare me. Doesn't really scare
and
us.
Like you said, this used to be the scariest division in football just a couple of seasons ago, and it's crazy to see how much it's changed. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, those were good record predictions. I believe we've only got 2 divisions left. We're going out west. Next week will be with the AFC West and then followed by the NFC West. But let's get into our big stories of the week in the world of housewives. This first one is a doozy. We have a legal update on the Jen Shah case, and it is a big one. This past week, there were new court documents in Jen Shah's case classifying her as a senior participant in a telemarketing scheme that she was arrested for earlier this year. Jen and her assistant Stu, who we saw on the show, are now both tier A defendants, meaning they're like top of the list, right? The document claims they were the ones responsible for orchestrating the broader scheme and supplying leads. I have a quote from Jen's lawyer, who said, after investigating for nearly 10 years in a 12-day trial in which Ms. Shah was never mentioned, the government suddenly lobs this absurd claim. This is just their latest made-up allegation, and like all others, totally unsupported by evidence. The reality is she is totally innocent. So just to kind of like put into perspective how serious these claims are and the fact that she's being labeled as a tier A defendant, 4 other defendants who are also listed as tier A, or 4 others have also been listed as tier A, and one has already been sentenced to 78 months in prison, which is 6.5 years. Okay. So she's tier A, lower tiers have already been receiving their sentences, and they have been anywhere from 1 to 7 years. So this is not looking, if this is true, and if they can prove this and win, this is looking real bad for her.
Yeah.
Real bad, real scary. So we're going to keep you guys posted on this one because, we're obviously going to get all this content too for season 2, which I believe, like we said, I think is going to either be.
I think we're getting a trailer. I think we're getting a trailer in the coming weeks. I think I saw that we're getting a trailer.
I'm predicting either the fall or winter. I do believe it's going to come in 2021, and we're ready for it because right as soon as they started filming is when she got arrested. So we are literally going to see it all play out.
Definitely. And I remember actually I think it was a week or 2 ago, or when this was unfolding, more so than ever, a non housewives person I saw on Instagram posted a story or something, and I think it was from TMZ or Page 6, and it was why do these famous people do this? Don't they know they're on camera? And I was like, thank you. Katie and I don't say that every single week. Why would you sign on to being a housewife if you are literally the shadiest person ever?
It's there's that new mafia show on MTV or VH1 or somewhere, and I'm like, what actual idiot that's really in the mob would sign up for this shit? It makes no sense. But okay,
it just why it doesn't make any sense.
No. Yeah.
All right, so more in the world of housewives. We got, probably at no one's request, but we did get a Real Housewives of New York mid-season trailer. And I say that because Katie and I have been complaining about the season. And when you get a mid-season trailer, that means there's 6 or 7 more episodes.
And they're trying to pump us up, and we just can't get pumped. It's not happening.
So when I saw it was when it was coming soon, I was like, no.
Oh dear Lord.
That means there's 6 more episodes. Shit, I wanted you to end it next week. I don't want any more. Stop. So we did get it. So after last week's episode of Real Housewives of New York, we did get the mid-season trailer for what is still to come. And honestly, can a season 13 be salvaged? We actually really don't know. So here's what we're getting. More of Martin. Thank God. Honestly, I saw a post from him today, and I think it's from an upcoming episode. He's with the girls. So excited. Maybe it was from last night, so I don't know. I didn't see last night. I know you didn't see last night either. Low-key, went to bed at 8 o'clock, had the worst headache of my life, had to go to sleep early, so I missed it. I've been, as much as I hate it, I've been kind of on top of it every Tuesday, but
this season, this franchise needs to be saved. Didn't think that would ever come out of my mouth, but it needs to be saved. Why don't we give Martin an apple? Just give the man an apple.
He needs to be the first man on a Real Housewives series. Like, he deserves an apple for sure. So Ebony is searching for her father, and she sits down with someone who has 3 potential people for her, which is exciting. So, but then also too, we're going to see is at the end of Garth and Lou. Well, low key, we see it's the end of them.
Right.
But apparently the whole drama is that he was seen on page 6 with her again. Listen, Garth, you're probably the same as Jen Shah. You know you're getting into this shit. Why the fuck would you sign up for it? Like, you're going to be on page 6.
Lou is a queen, and she's going to be in the press.
She's a countess. You know what the deal is.
Yeah.
We get more of Bershawn. I've been loving Bershawn. I don't know about you.
Well, I told you guys that I binged like 4 episodes recently that I had missed. So I finally got Bershawn, and I totally it's funny because
love her.
I recently just did a Google, you guys know I'm not on Twitter. I did a Google search, and I was interested to see what people were tweeting about Roni. And oh my God, the Roni Twitter world loves Bershawn. So,
and she's great. She's I love Ebony too. Like, I think she's brought some good things. And she gets back to me on Twitter right away. That's how I know I like them. Bershawn got back to me on Twitter twice already. So I'm like, woohoo! These ladies love me. They love me.
Digging her.
Not like Lou. Lou loves us more than anyone.
Besties.
So the ladies are dressing up as one another. So Ramona apparently is dressing up as Leah, which looks very funny. So we'll see about that. And then obviously a lot of fighting with Ramona. I feel like a lot of targets have been on Ramona this season, which, maybe it's payback for seasons past where she's been attacking everyone. So it's Sonia versus Ramona, Leah versus Ramona. So the world versus Ramona. So we will see what happens that. But I don't know. Katie, do you think the season can be salvaged? No, I agree.
Because we just gave everybody the big highlights from that trailer, and none of those stories really truly interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
There's nothing juicy or good from it.
Bethany needs to come back. Dorinda needs to come back. Tinsley needs to come back, and that's it.
If I'm gonna cut them some slack on something, right, to kind of play devil's advocate here, they did film during COVID. And I think one of the things that Roni has always excelled in is they take some of the best vacations like we've seen on the show. They weren't able to do anything like that. They went to Salem, Massachusetts. It's not.
Katie, Salem is that's my dream vacation.
It's not what we're used to seeing and loving. We love seeing them at the pool, at the beach, all these beautiful places that everybody's dying to go and travel to. But then take away those glamorous vacations. We also don't have Bluestone Manor anymore. So it's that's a huge other, the vacations, no Bluestone Manor. They were kind of not set up for success, unfortunately.
I feel like they could have done Salem so much better. Literally the Halloween capital.
Give us the Russian bath. Well, I guess you couldn't go to the Russian bathhouse during COVID.
During COVID. You probably shouldn't go without COVID. You really shouldn't.
Yeah, that's still timeout on the Russian bathhouse.
But yeah, honestly, we'll, as much as we don't want to, we'll continue watching for you guys, but that's it.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into our game. This is a football one. This was a second half of a game, part 2 of a game that we promised you guys we were going to do. So a couple of episodes ago, we looked at an NFL.com article from Dan Hansis where he talked about the 2021 season and predicted an MVP for each NFC team. Well, now we have his AFC team predictions. Caitlin and I are going to say whether we agree, disagree, and regardless of whether we agree or not, we are going to give you an alternative pick. We could do this rapid fire. Let's just dive right into it. We're going to start with Baltimore. Dan Hansis' MVP is quarterback Lamar Jackson. Agree or disagree?
I'll agree with it, just given the hype of the QB. And then I'll love the special teams and give it to Justin Tucker.
Oh my God, we are already 1 for 1. I agree. And my alternative is the man, the myth, the legend, Justin Tucker. If I was a Baltimore fan, by the way, that would be the number 1 jersey I owned.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Okay, Buffalo. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs. Agree or disagree?
I really do love Stephon Diggs, but I'm going to disagree with this one and give it to Josh Allen.
2 for 2, baby. Disagree. Going Josh Allen.
I swear to God, if we get all of these, I'll sweat.
Okay, Cincinnati. We have running back Joe Mixon.
I'm going to agree with it, but my alternative is Joe Burrow.
We were like halvesies on this. I disagreed, and I really do think the future is bright for a healthy Joe Burrow, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he will be healthy, and I'm going with him. All right, Cleveland. I feel like there's a lot of people you could choose from. Dan Hansis with defensive end Myles Garrett.
I'm going to disagree with this one, and I'm going to my Nick Chubb running back here.
We are matching again, baby. I disagreed, and I went with Nick Chubb. We're big Nick Chubb fans. Like, honestly, give credit where credit is due.
Love it.
Denver, we have linebacker Von Miller.
I do. I love the pick with Von Miller. I do hate the injury bug that he does get from time to time, for sure. So I have to disagree with this one, and I got to go with Jerry Jeudy here.
We're halvesies. I agreed. I feel as though this is a team that's kind of lacking star power, but Von Miller is one of them. But my alternative is, I'm expecting a good sophomore season from wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. Houston. To me, this is as sad as it gets.
It was a very sad.
That Dan Hansis' MVP for Houston is running back David Johnson. I think people forget that he's still in the league, honestly.
And listen, I'm going to agree with it because we got to understand Randall Cobb went to Green Bay today, so he's out of Houston.
He's not even anybody anymore. It
doesn't matter. Katie, no one in Houston is somebody in Houston. So you got to think of that. So I'm going to agree with it, but I'm going to give the alternative to rookie Nico Collins. So I think he's gonna shine there because Cobb just went off to Green Bay today. So Houston has no one.
I think I flaked out of answering this one because I disagreed and I was just like, maybe in a world where Deshaun Watson still plays, I'm putting Deshaun Watson.
Oh, Katie,
I flaked out because I couldn't. There was nobody.
No.
Okay. Indy.
Nico Collins is one of the top wide receivers in the draft. He wasn't taken until the 6th round. He's very talented. Yeah.
I don't know about him. All right. Indy quarterback Carson Wentz.
I'm disagreeing with this one just because I don't like Carson Wentz, but I got to give it up. You know me, I love my lineman, Quentin Nelson. Let's go, baby.
I went with Quentin Nelson.
I'm still a little salty at the Giants. I love Saquon, obviously, but I love Quentin Nelson.
No, but honestly, this kind of I disagreed with the Carson Wentz pick, and I feel as though if Carson Wentz is going to be successful, I think the biggest factor is going to be Quentin Nelson's an absolute beast. And honestly, I'm not even putting Carson as number 2. A close second for me is Darius Leonard. So, but Quentin Nelson, unbelievable player. All right, Jacksonville, quarterback Trevor Lawrence.
So I'll agree with this one, but my alternative, we spoke about it
on this roster.
Well, no, we spoke about him earlier. Marvin Jones. We spoke about it with Jeff earlier. I really liked him on Detroit last year. He was on my fantasy team. I did like everything. I do like him on this Jacksonville team. So he is my alternative. And then also, too, they did just pick up Shaquille Griffin in the recently, about a week or two ago. I love him, too. So he'll be my alternative. He'll be my second alternative.
I agree with Trevor Lawrence because I really don't like this roster top to bottom. I would have liked to go with James Robinson, the running back, as my alternative. But then I remembered, oh, wait, they drafted Travis Etienne, who's supposed to be huge for them, even though James Robinson was killer last year. But so that kind of eliminated that. I went with wide receiver DJ Chark. And honestly, that just shows that I feel like there really was nobody to pick from. Kansas City, this one's a little bit easy, I think. Quarterback Patrick Mahomes.
Agree. And then my alternative is Travis Kelce.
I said agree, and I said Tyreek Hill, parentheses, very close second, Travis Kelce.
Very close.
Very close. Las Vegas Raiders, we have a tight end, the only tight end on our list. We have Mr. Darren Waller.
As much as I do like him, I actually did have him in fantasy last year. But I'm going to disagree and go with Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, agreed. Exactly. Disagree, Josh Jacobs. But, we talked a lot about earlier about fantasy football and tight ends and how there's not a lot of them. Darren Waller, get him. He is one of those top guys. Okay, the Los Angeles Chargers. We love this player. We always give him so much love. So I was excited that Dan Hansis picked him. But safety, Derwin James, obviously coming back from injury.
I think it was the injury thing that really, as much as we do love him, it just really did surprise me to see, do you really think he's going to be that much of a comeback player, especially with other guys on defense? You think of guys like Joey Bosa, things like that. It really does not take anything away, from Derwin James. So I'm going to disagree with this one, and I'm going to go with Justin Herbert.
I agree. Disagreed and went with Justin Herbert. I love what Jeff said at the beginning of the show, like calling him possibly an MVP candidate. I could see that. We're expecting big things from the Chargers this year. Yeah. And that's going to mainly stem from the play of Justin Herbert.
Absolutely.
Okay, Miami. We have a cornerback. This is the only cornerback on the list. Xavier Howard.
I'm going to agree, but I also want to give it to their other cornerback, Byron Jones. So I want to give them a tie. So you have a left cornerback and a right cornerback. So I want to pop them both in there. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 special.
This is another roster that I found was extremely lacking in talent. But yes, I am going to agree. Xavier Howard is the best player on that team. And my alternative is wide receiver Devontae Parker.
Yep.
All right. This is a trend that's going to continue. Another roster, shockingly, that's just there's not a lot to choose from. Sorry, Jeff. The New England Patriots. We have a linebacker, Dante Hightower.
So I agree, but it's quarterback pending.
Okay.
I agree if it's Cam Newton. I disagree, and I will give it to Nelson Aguilar if it's Mac Jones. Aguilar is a target deep, and Mac Jones knows how to throw the ball deep and hit his targets. Aguilar is targeted time after time. And I think with this he's obviously new to the Patriots. I think they will, if Mac Jones is the quarterback, he can send it to him and he can give it to him time after time. So again, it's quarterback pending. So I agreed with it. If it's Cam Newton, if it's Mac Jones, I disagree and give it to Nelson Aguilar.
All right. Well, I'm agreeing with Hightower. My alternative is also a newbie to the New England Patriots, who I think is going to be, one of their bright spots. I went with tight end Hunter Henry.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I do like Hunter Henry.
All right, continuing our trend of talentless rosters, we have the New York Jets. We have a linebacker, the only linebacker on the list. We have linebacker C.J. Mosley.
I just took the easy way out here. I agreed with it and then threw in Zach Wilson to the mix, so whatever.
So
I'm wasting my time.
I agree with it, but I threw in a different rookie. And I threw in a lineman rookie. And I went with guard Elijah Vera.
Oh.
I honestly really liked him in the draft.
Yeah.
And I thought he was a big name I thought the Jets had a great draft. And when they landed him, I thought he was going to be really good. I don't know if you were expecting me to say running back Michael Carter. He's somebody else that I'm going to be looking at for the Jets this year. But I like Vera Tucker. I think he's going to be good. All right, Pittsburgh. Dan Hansis is throwing a rookie into the mix here. He's going running back Najee Harris.
1,000,001% agreeing with this for sure. And my alternative, because it's the hot take of the summer and coming in, he's slimmer. He looks better. Big Ben. So I don't agree with it. But I think, honestly, if the media is portraying it, they'll take Big Ben on this one.
I'm kind of surprised. First off, I disagreed. I did not say Najee Harris, although I do think he's going to be huge for them. I really do. I'm surprised you didn't throw this name into the mix. I think he's going to be a top candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. I'm going with linebacker TJ Watt. I think
You're not wrong.
He keeps getting snubbed for Defensive Player of the Year, and this guy's going to be lit out of a cannon, pissed off about it.
Yeah.
All right, and finally, we have a talented roster in the Tennessee Titans, and they are going with Dan Hansis is going with newbie wide receiver Julio Jones.
I cannot tell you how much I disagree with this pick.
Okay.
And it pains me that he did pick Julio Jones because Derrick Henry is the Tennessee Titans MVP for the end of his time.
For the foreseeable future.
For the foreseeable future. So do not put this nonsense on my plate ever again. I do not want to see this. And it just really pisses me off. And they're both Alabama boys. You can't even come at me with the bias opinion. So see the door. Literally, Derrick Henry will be their MVP until the end of time.
I disagreed. You can even easily make arguments that wide receiver A.J. Brown is going to have better stats than Julio Jones. But I'm going to disagree. And of course, I'm agreeing with you in going with Derrick Henry. There's no other answer.
Make that decision. You can't. That just I like worry for this guy's future. Like, who are you? Like, what are you doing? I worry for him. Like, are you okay? Like, do you sleep at night? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, I wonder.
I hear you. Well, fun game. I'm glad we dove into the AFC side, but this game really opened my eyes to certain teams that desperately need help, like desperately. So,
well, this will actually trigger my get it off my chest going through non-talented rosters. But why don't you go ahead and get us started? Because we are at that time of the episode where we get it off our chest. Positive, negative, football, housewives, wine, life, anything you want to talk about. So why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Sure. An ESPN article just recently came out, and it was talking about the big mega blockbuster trade that happened in March of 2019 between the New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns. If you can't figure it out, you should already know what I'm talking about. But this is when the Browns sent a 2019 first-round pick and a 2019 third-round pick and safety Jabril Peppers to the Giants for wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. Now, with those picks that the Giants acquired, they ended up selecting defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence and edge rusher O'Shane Ximenez with the draft pick that they got in that trade. Okay, so you're getting X-Men, you're getting Dexter Lawrence, you're getting Jabril Peppers in exchange for Odell. That's how it shook out. And so basically the article was, now that the dust has settled, and we have a little bit of time, and we've looked at it, 2 seasons have gone by. Who is the winner of this trade? Obviously, people always give winner and losers like immediately, right? But now that time has passed, how do we feel about it? Well, this article says this. While what happened, Beckham's first 2 years in Cleveland have been a major disappointment. An uneven first season under Freddie Kitchens saw him go from being the king of slants to producing the league's worst EPA on slant routes in 2019. Beckham was then off to a slow start in 2020 before tearing an ACL. Baker Mayfield's numbers were better across the board without OBJ in the lineup, and while correlation is not causation, the Browns simply didn't miss him during their run to the postseason. Now, on the Giants side, while the Giants haven't replaced Beckham in the lineup, they've gotten more out of the players on the other side of this trade. Peppers hasn't been the sort of game-disrupting safety scouts might have expected from his time at Michigan, and he doesn't play the more valuable free safety role, but he's a solid, strong safety and a team leader. Lawrence has been the best player in this trade, living up to expectations as a stout run defender while adding 4 sacks last season. Peppers and Lawrence might have been replacements for departed veterans in Landon Collins and Damon Harrison, but they've held up their end of the bargain. Beckham hasn't in Cleveland, and 4 years removed from his last Pro Bowl appearance, it would be a surprise if he was still a number 1 wide receiver in 2021. Wow. This one has flipped all the way around for Gettleman and Big Blue. New York is the winner of this trade.
I love it.
So, and in the article, he does mention as well, like everybody thought Gettleman and the New York Giants were absolutely batshit crazy when they made this trade. And here we are. So I feel vindicated, and I wanted to share that on the show and get it off my chest. Simply put, I think the quote said it all, and I feel vindicated.
I feel vindicated as well. I think we've spoken about it. You know, I think one of the questions, it was like one of the things, like where you've been during Giants history. And I think we did speak about, the massive trades with Odell and Landon Collins. Where were we, and where were you in the moment in time? I'll never forget those trades, and we were at dinner, like family dinner with Odell, and it was just like, we're at a restaurant too. And I think my brother said something and other people in the restaurant kind of stood up too. And they were like, wait, what? Like, and then like Landon Collins came a little bit later, and it was like kind of crazy. And to look back on it, like you look at a guy like Jabril Peppers, like he's now 21. Like I'm thinking about getting Landon Collins like stripped off my jersey and get Peppers put on it. Like you need to look at it. And I think that the thing here is that we need to normalize analyzing trades and things like this in a year or two. And I think there's so much pressure and in real time panic and like things going on, like, oh my God, no, the worst decision ever. I can't do that.
But you have, when the trade involves draft picks that are going to come in the future, you have to wait like 2 years.
But people don't because they're crazy. And I think as fans, maybe we're allowed to get a little panicky. We were a little panicky with the draft this year with us going up to a certain pick and getting Kadarius Stoney and freaking out a little bit. But as analysts, when you're doing this real time, that's your job to fully understand, like, you should be waiting a couple of years. There were so many people that shit on Gettleman and the Giants when this happened. And look at this now. Look at us now. Right. 2019 to 2021, especially with a year of 2020 of COVID, that's not, I would say that's just a year. That's not 2 years. That's technically a year with everything that's been going on.
You ever go online and football fans and you read those articles, those headlines that say make it or break it year for these players, these teams, these coaches, et cetera. And of course, we always see Daniel Jones on that list. But another huge name on every single one of those lists is wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr.
And this no one ever
year for him.
It's been a make or break year for him for the past 2 seasons. And I think this is a good segue.
Well, this is a big one. This is a big one.
Well, it is for sure. But I think this is a good, segue into my get it off my chest because, I watch Get Up on ESPN every single morning. And we were actually watching it this morning. And I guess I had turned it off prior to this segment, which good things. It would have pissed me off for the entire day. And I probably would have gotten in trouble on Twitter for going off on a tangent. But I had seen a clip right before the show. So, Dave Greeny, the guy that, hosts the show, made a comment, and they do like hot takes all the time. And his take was that, look out for the New York Giants this year. They made tremendous moves in the offseason, both with free agency. Obviously, we got Kenny Golladay, other people, with the draft, with Kadarius Toney and everything like that. We really built up on our roster, but not just even in the offseason. Last year, proven in front of everyone's faces in prime time against teams like the Seattle Seahawks, our defense just grew week after week, really just showcasing what the New York Giants have been able to do in a very, not in a long time have been able to showcase, progress and everything like that. So just saying, watch out for this team. Everyone else in the show, the eye rolls, the mockery, watch out for this team. You'll just be watching them on your TV set every week. That's what you have to watch out for. I think, it just, at this point, I understand the Giants have been bad and it's not been good and it's been really frustrating. But at this point, watching what we've done over the past season or two and what we've been able to do in the offseason, what management has been able to do and everything like that, I'm just sick of the slander, and it's really pissing me off at this point because we just read you a list of AFC teams and we wanted to give you MVP potential players. And for certain teams, we couldn't even agree with you on one, and maybe
we couldn't give you 2 players. We could not.
So, back off, because the New York Giants are not teams like that. We've actually worked really hard to build around certain things like that. We're not denying that Daniel Jones has a really important season this year. He does, absolutely. But guess what? If he fails, and I do not want him to, I really want him to be our franchise quarterback. If we have to replace him, guess what? Everyone around him is still really fucking good. So I'm just really tired of the slander at this point. And I think the Giants have been laughed at and mocked at for way too long. To have an ESPN show, have analysts roll their eyes at the New York Giants. No. It's not at that point. If you're going to roll your eyes, I want to hear an argument. I want to sit down with you. I want to hear what you have to say. Making fun of of someone, making fun of a team, or just rolling your eyes and being like, ha, they suck, is no longer going to make it for the Giants. You actually have to sit down with me, you have to sit down with us and explain what your reasoning is, why they will not be successful this year, why they will be not successful in the next 5 years. So that's my get it off my chest. And if you guys haven't seen it, go to @GetUp on Twitter and you can see the segment. And it's really embarrassing. And it's really for, I think, that entire crew, that entire morning crew that does Get Up, you should probably be truly embarrassed for what you spoke about this morning, because you want to be football analyst. It really didn't show. It really did not show this morning. So except for,
I mean, I agree. Like, everybody has the right to be as honest and blunt. And honestly, everybody has the right to bash whatever team they think is not going to be successful. But I agree with you. I think state your case, say why, like what's the deal? Because I think you're right. I think there are a lot of rosters across this league that are far worse than the New York Giants.
Right.
So I completely hear your frustration and understand. And this is going to be an interesting year. That's all I can say about the New York Giants. I think it's going to be an interesting year. Yeah. I don't know where we're going to go, but we're going to go somewhere, and it's going to be interesting. So. Absolutely. All right. Well, honestly, that was a phenomenal show. Yeah. And just as we inch closer to the season, we are going to continue to give you fantasy football, talk. It was so amazing having Jeff Pratt on the show tonight. Absolutely. He gave us really great tips and really good insight. And then as far as things that you don't want to miss this week, we have the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. That was on tonight at 8. You can catch it on demand. Real Housewives of Potomac is on Sunday at 8 p.m. Roni is on Tuesday at 9. We talked about this last week because we were wondering when it was going to come, and we have a premiere date for you. NFL Network's Top 100 Players will premiere on August 15th. So that's right around the corner. And then the NFL season opener, 44 days away. So we're getting there, people. We're churning away.
Getting there.
But yeah, thank you guys for an awesome show. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for listening to us. And we're going to catch you next week. Have a good rest of your week.
Absolutely. Goodbye.